Hello my friends, and welcome back to another Baldur's Gate 3 full party building guide for Honor Mode. Hope you're all doing well. Today we're covering a full melee party. This is for the players who like to get up in the opponent's face to really perfectly demonstrate the might of your characters and your own tactical prowess. Now, you will often hear that ranged characters are much easier for Honor Mode than melee characters. In fact, in my very first video that I did for full party builds for Honor Mode on this channel, I recommended 4 ranged characters as the easiest way to beat Honor Mode. So in some ways this is a little bit of a challenge run for players who really want to focus on melee, but you also get some pretty solid advantages for having 4 melee characters, which we're going to make full use of. So it works out to being a much stronger party than you might think at first glance. There's a lot of very powerful abilities in this game. From the very basic, you don't care about enemy melee characters getting to your squishy ranged backline, because you don't have a squishy ranged backline, to the many abilities in the game that care about your party members being close together. Most parties will struggle to make use of those abilities, but we get to abuse all of them, making this party a synergy machine. Like all of my full party building guides, the goal here is to take 4 characters that are very powerful on their own, but when added together make an even more powerful and synergistic whole. And for this build, we're really leaning into the synergy. This party works together so well that the whole is very much more than the sum of its parts, and the parts by themselves are already really excellent. As always, of course, with these full party building guides, this will also require no specific story choices for you to make, and will not share any items between the characters, because these builds are all designed to work together. So this should be an excellent build for actually playing through Honor Mode. The idea here is to make a practical and functional party for those of you who want to hit things in the face. Alright, let's get to the builds. I should also mention that I will be going over each of these builds, levels 1 to 12, and showing you how to build them and what items to take, but I've done more detailed build guides for each of these 4 builds, which I'll link in the description below, so if you want more detail about any of these characters, definitely go check those videos out for more information. Let's start with the character that makes the whole thing tick. Because our party is entirely melee, we get to make optimal use of an extremely powerful class feature that's very rarely seen in Baldur's Gate 3 character optimization, because so few parties can take full advantage of it the way we can. I'm talking about Wolf Totem Barbarian, which gives advantage on melee attacks to characters within its radius. Our entire party will be making melee attacks, and can safely group up thanks to the defensive abilities that other characters will be applying, so we're going to have permanent advantage on every single attack that we make with this party. Obviously that's huge, but even more importantly, it doesn't cost us resources to do that. As long as our Barbarian is raging, which they will be in most fights of course, we will have advantage on every melee attack that we make permanently for free. There's a lot of ways to take advantage, no pun intended, of that by using characters that care a lot about critical hits, which of course many of our characters will, to get massive damage bonuses from more frequent critical hits, and of course just hit all of our attacks. To start, let's build the character, so we're going to take a pretty normal Barbarian attribute spread. One thing for this party as well is I want there to be no overlap in items, and I'm going to only have one character use strength elixirs, because I personally find it annoying if multiple characters are drinking strength elixirs. Because you just have to stockpile so many of them to make that viable. You could build this character with strength elixirs, in which case you would take 8 strength instead of 16 and boost your other stats, but this character will not be our strength elixir user by default, so we're going to take the very normal attribute spread of 16 strength, 14 dexterity, 16 constitution, and 12 wisdom. Make sure that you have athletics and perception, because that's just very important for your party to have access to, and then no other decisions that we have to make at level 1, because we're a barbarian, so things are simple. At character level 2, we get Reckless Attack, and this is going to be a very important ability. For one thing, it lets us actually hit all of our attacks with this character. Our other party members will hit every attack, or more or less every attack, because they're going to have advantage on every single attack they make, thanks to this character. But this character also gets advantage on every attack, so our whole party is going to be making advantaged attacks. Even more importantly, Reckless Attack gives enemies advantage against this character, which is actually quite important for how this party is going to be built, because we want this character to be taking the majority of attacks that enemies make. You're a barbarian, so you have lots of health and damage reduction against non-magical physical damage, so you can resistance against non-magical physical damage. So you can benefit very strongly from tanking and resisting all of the incoming damage, but also we're going to be making heavy use of the Sentinel feat, which is going to give our other characters a lot of free attacks whenever this character tanks a hit. So we want this character to be the center of attention. Reckless Attack can give enemies advantage, and the AI in Baldur's Gate prioritizes who it attacks based on how easy it is for them to land a hit. So there will be many times where we want to use Reckless Attack, even if we don't need it to hit our attack, just to give the enemies advantage on purpose so that they target this character with their attacks. That also means that we can still have decent AC. The rest of our party will still have pretty good AC, but the AI will heavily prioritize making attacks with advantage, so we don't have to tank our AC. We can still have enemies miss some of their attacks sometimes, because we have Reckless Attack to guide the enemy AI in a way that is advantageous to us. At character level 3, we're of course taking Wild Heart Barbarian, and the bestial heart that we're going to take is going to be Wolf Heart. This gives allies advantage on melee attack rolls against enemies within 7 feet of us. And importantly, our allies don't have to be within 7 feet, so an ally on the other side of that enemy will still have advantage. The Wolf Heart aura applies to the enemy, not to the ally. So you still have a decent amount of freedom of positioning. As long as this character is near an enemy, our other melee attackers will have advantage against them. At Barbarian level 4, we're going to take a feat, and the feat that we're going to take is going to be Great Weapon Master. This character will end up with pretty solid initiative, so we don't need alert at this point. It is good if this character goes first, but Great Weapon Master just lets us do so much more damage, and we have Reckless Attack, so we want to be landing our Reckless Attacks. If you are finding that you are consistently losing initiative with this character because you haven't found initiative gear or vigilance elixirs to give them at this stage in the game, you could swap out for Alert and then sub in for Great Weapon Master later. I'm never going to say it's wrong to take Alert at level 4 in Honor mode, but Great Weapon Master increases our damage output significantly, so it's something that we want. This party, of course, is going to want to kill enemies very quickly because we're all in melee, so we don't want to give enemies a chance to fight back against us, because if they land an AoE on our whole party, that can be dangerous, though, of course, we're going to have ways to mitigate that as we level up. At level 5, we get both fast movement and extra attack, and of course this character will be never wearing heavy armor, so we'll always have the fast movement. This lets us position ourselves next to priority targets more easily. The whole purpose of this party's functioning is that this character gives you advantage when it's next to important enemies, so the ability to reposition yourself next to the most important enemies in a fight is very important. Fast movement helps with that a ton. Extra attack just doubles our damage output, and while our other party members are contributing a lot of our damage, this character is no slouch in the damage department itself, of course being a reckless attacking Great Weapon Master character, so doubling our damage output is extremely powerful for this character as well. At Barbarian level 6, we get an animal aspect, and the animal aspect that I'm going to suggest is that you take Aspect of the Beast, Elk. Just like fast movement, this increases our movement speed, but it increases our entire party's movement speed, just passive, permanent, +5 movement speed to our entire party, as long as they remain within the aura, and since your party is going to be grouped closely together, you are going to remain within the aura at all times, so you will be able to always boost your whole party's movement speed. Again, the major challenge of a melee party is just getting next to the enemy, because once we're next to the important targets in an encounter, that encounter is as good as won. Nothing can survive being in melee with this party, so just getting there is the main challenge. So Aspect of the Beast Elk helps a ton with that. 5 feet of movement speed across our whole party adds up a lot. I mean, you've heard me talk many, many times about how good movement speed is, but the fact that we just get this passively is excellent. One alternative that I do want to mention is that you could also build this character and this party into a more bleed-focused build with Aspect of the Beast Tiger or Wolverine. If you use certain weapons that have the Lacerate, short rest weapon action, or items that apply bleeding when you attack, combined with Bual's Benediction and things like that, you can add a lot of bleed synergy into this party. It's not something that I'm emphasizing for this version of the build, but it is an alternative that I do want to mention because it's a powerful alternative build that you can do, and Aspect of the Beast Tiger for hitting your attacks even more accurately, or Wolverine for locking down enemies, are a very important component of that alternative. But for this version, we're going to go with Elk, so that we can get next to enemies and hit them really hard. Next up, we're going to Barbarian level 7, because Feral Instinct is an incredible class feature, and this character does want to win initiative. You want to be the first party member to act. That doesn't mean that we, in most encounters, you want this character to be the first party member to act so that you can rage and move next to enemies to grant advantage to the rest of your party. That doesn't mean that you have to have higher initiative than your party members. It just means that your whole party needs to have higher initiative than the enemies, because then you can mix and match actions with the shared initiative system. So Feral Instinct, giving us 3/5 of the alert feat by itself, combined with any initiative gear, means that we should win initiative in just about every encounter in the entire game. Let this character act first so that she can get next to enemies, giving advantage to the rest of our party members so we can beat them down easily. Of course, making yourself immune to surprise is excellent as well, and Feral Instinct, as always, is one of the most powerful class features in the game, so very much something that we're interested in picking up. Then we're going to Barbarian level 8, because we want to get our second feat, and the feat that we're going to take is just an ability improvement to our strength. Now, if you are playing with elixirs on this character as well as on the other characters, there's a couple other options that you could go with for this character, since you won't need to take strength improvement, and those include things like Mage Slayer, which actually is pretty nice to give yourself advantage on saving throws against spells, and also this character is one of the few that is the only character in our party that doesn't have a great use for its reaction by default. So having the ability to make a reaction attack against enemies who cast spells will let us use our reactions even more effectively than other characters. Another option that you could take is just taking Tough. This character is going to take a lot of hits, so increasing your hit points is actually not irrelevant. The whole purpose of this character in this party is to trigger enemy aggro by using Reckless Attack, and making sure that you have the hit points to survive that is not a terrible choice either, or Mobile, just because getting into range is always the struggle with this party, so Mobile is very good for that. You can also use Athlete, and another build that we could use is taking an odd point in strength and using Athlete instead of taking +2 strength in order to increase our jump distance. However, I don't typically value increased jump distance that heavily on Barbarians, because the Barbarian will have to use its bonus action to rage in the first round of combat, so you won't be able to reposition with a jump very easily in the first round of combat. That being said, it's still excellent to be able to do this, so an alternative stat build is to take 10 Wisdom and 17 starting strength, use Athlete to hit 18 strength, and especially if you have found ways to become immune to fear and wisdom save targeting effects at this point, you can safely drop your wisdom save. So all of those are decent options, but for this version of the build, we're just going with an ability improvement here. Then at level 9, we don't need to take any more levels in Barbarian. We've got all of the great things that we went into Barbarian for, so let's just go ahead and make this character even better at actually fighting by taking a couple fighter levels. We get a fighting style to give ourselves great weapon fighting style, so we do even more damage, just increasing the damage dice that we roll. And we also get the bonus action Second Wind, which is pretty useful since this character will be taking a lot of hits, so both of those are very good. But of course, the real reason that we're in fighter is to pick up Action Surge at this next level. This will let this character just burst down an important target in a single blow, and if you have this character kill one enemy, you can still move next to a second enemy and benefit from the Wolf Barbarian Rage for the rest of your party after killing them. So don't be afraid to have this character make its attacks, bring down an enemy, and then move. Even if you leave an enemy at low health, you can often move another character, have it attack, then have this character move, then move the rest of your party to the last enemy and take them out. So increasing our damage output here is obviously awesome. Action Surge is an incredibly powerful ability, so most Barbarian builds are going to take 4 levels of Fighter to get access to it, and this one is no exception. At Fighter level 3, we're going to take Battlemaster Fighter for the maneuvers. You could take Champion Fighter and try to be more critical hit focused, but this build is not going to focus too heavily on critical hits, so Battlemaster Fighter will just give us more damage overall, as well as giving us options for a bunch of tactical decision-making in combat. I already mentioned that this character doesn't normally have an amazing use for its reaction, so we're going to grab Riposte, which gives us an excellent reaction that does a ton of damage and uses a action type that this character isn't normally using. Enemies will often miss their attacks against this character because even though you're granting advantage and your AC is not spectacular, you're still going to have decent AC, and we will be using effects from our other party members that can cause attacks against this party member to miss, so they will often think they have a better chance of hitting than they actually do, and you can get extra damage out of Riposte. For our second two, we're going to go, normally I would suggest taking Trip Attack to easily trigger advantage against enemies, but you don't need Trip Attack for this party member. You don't need Trip Attack for this party because we're going to have advantage on all of our attacks anyways, so you don't particularly need to take Trip Attack. I'm going to recommend taking Precision Attack because it's still useful even at this stage of the game just to guarantee that you land hits. And then for our final attack, we'll take Disarming Attack. There are some late game enemies that this is quite good against, and so even though we don't get this until late, and normally it's a more early game focused ability, it can still be very useful in the late game. An alternative is to take Goading Attack, because you could attempt to force enemies to attack you. Now, they usually will attack you anyways, but Goading Attack gives them even more incentive to do so. So this is a pretty good option that's on theme for the character. Not a Battlemaster maneuver that I think is particularly strong in and of itself, but it has great synergy with what this party is trying to do. So if you think that you might get good use of it, definitely try that out. And finally, at Fighter level 4, we're just going to grab our last feat and take an ability improvement to bring our strength up to 20. Again, as I mentioned, there are a lot of other options. We already talked about the most powerful ones for this party, so if you're using strength elixirs, then go ahead and take one of those. At this level, you can have like Mobile and Mage Slayer if you're using strength elixirs. That's obviously stronger, but requires more micromanagement of your resources, so it's up to you whether you care about that. This party definitely does not need to have 2 characters chugging strength elixirs, so personally, I'd recommend not doing it. I think you'll have more fun if you don't have to stockpile 2 per day, but it's really up to you and what you think your tolerance for that kind of thing is. Items for this character are very easy. This character is designed to fit in perfectly with this party, so has very few specific item requirements, and is one of the characters in this party that needs basically no specific items to function, so you will be able to fill it out with whatever you haven't used on the rest of your party. You need, of course, a good medium armor set and a good 2-handed weapon, and there are 2 that I recommend keeping an eye out for in terms of two-handed weapons. The Soulbreaker Greatsword for the early and mid-game, because that increases your initiative, which is what this character needs the most up until level 7. Even if you aren't building this as a Githyanki, although of course you can use Lae'zel or build it as a Githyanki, the Soulbreaker Greatsword is excellent. And as another character, you can also disguise as a Githyanki in order to gain the additional psychic damage from the Soulbreaker Greatsword. Then in the late game, you will probably want to swap to the Sword of Chaos, because this character will be tanking damage in order to trigger sentinel attacks from your party members, so the ability to heal up whenever we attack is pretty nice. While we don't have a lot of multipliers to our hit points, we've just got a lot of hit points, so constantly healing is not terrible. It is definitely something that we're happy to do. For our medium armor set, the armors that provide damage reduction are pretty good, like the Adamantine Scale Mail. And of course this character is going to get hit, so the reeling effect is also pretty good. It just makes it will slowly shut down enemies as they are attacking. So we're going to gain a lot of advantages from the Adamantine Scale Mail in, again, the early and mid-game. And then you probably want other healing items like the Ring of Regeneration. This character can also benefit very heavily from some way to Misty Step, whether that be through scrolls or an amulet or the amulet or the Disintegrating Nightwalkers, although another amulet that I like a lot for this character is the Amulet of the Harpers, which gives you advantage on wisdom saving throws, despite the tooltip saying wisdom saving throws checks, which those are two different things. It gives advantage on wisdom saving throws, and gives you the shield spell, which can cause enemies who thought they were easily going to hit you thanks to the advantage to miss their attacks. Other than that, you're really just looking to fill out your damage and add some initiative bonuses to this character, especially in the early game, but you're very item independent, so there's not much specifically that you're looking for, and you won't conflict with your other party members at all. For our second character, we need to ensure that our party can stay alive when they are grouped up. Now, obviously, you won't always be grouped tightly together, but when you're playing an all-melee party, there will be times when the 4 party members are all surrounding a single enemy, or all grouped up so you can take full advantage of Protection Fighting Style and the Sentinel feat in order to maximize your damage output. So we need to ensure that our party doesn't all get obliterated by a fireball. There's one way in the game to do that perfectly, and that is the Oath of the Ancients Paladin. This character is going to provide the Aura of Protection, increasing our saving throws equal to our charisma for the entire party, so it's going to mean that we will always have excellent saving throws, and the Oath of the Ancients spell damage reduction aura, halving damage from incoming spells, meaning that we will take almost no damage when enemies cast spells against us. This is a very high dexterity party, so we're usually going to pass our dex saves against spells that target dexterity, which are most AoE damage spells, and then take half damage after that, so we'll be taking 1/4 damage before any resistances or anything else get applied, meaning that we can effectively ignore most enemy spellcasters once we have the Oath of the Ancients aura online. This character also, of course, gets smite attacks, provides excellent damage output as a result, and gets to be our party face, which is something that this party needs, just like every party, so we get to fulfill our dialogue skill needs with this character as well. We're going to start with a level of Paladin, and of course we're taking Oath of the Ancients Paladin, and we get Healing Radiance, which lets us use the buff on heal items on this character also for another broken mechanic that this party has access to. This will be a dexterity-based Paladin, so for our ability scores, we're going to drop Strength all the way down to 8, and take 16 in Dexterity, 16 in Charisma, and 14 in Constitution. This is a little bit low in Constitution for a melee character, of course, a little lower than I often prefer, but this character will have very high armor class, so should rarely get hit, since the rest of your party will be much more tempting to the enemy AI, and you have a lot of damage reduction, so you don't need the hit points as badly. If you're worried about that, you can drop your charisma down to 14 and take 16 constitution. Either will be fine, and then we're going to take 12 wisdom. Once we have our aura at level 7, or at level 6, that adds our charisma to our saving throws, we no longer need any points in wisdom, thanks to Paladin's proficiency and the charisma save aura, and so we can then respec to drop our wisdom down to 8, take 17 dexterity and 15 constitution, combined with an ability score improvement. This will let us get 18 and 16 to ensure that our stats are as high as possible. So I will recommend taking the previous stat split at level 1, and then at level 6, you're going to respec to the current stat split. Make sure that you have Persuasion, of course, since this is going to be the party face, and then you can take a background that gives you Insight and Persuasion. This character is the Guild Artisan background, so that will be pretty nice for your skill rolls in general, or you can take any other background, something like Charlatan for Performance and Deception, can give you more of the dialogue skills. But Persuasion is the important one to have on this character. We don't need to grab Sleight of Hand from our background, which is something you can sometimes do on Dex Paladins, because our third character is going to pick up Sleight of Hand for us, so we don't need that on this one. That's it for level 1. Let's move on to level 2. And at level 2 we get Smite attacks, a fighting style, and the fighting style that we're going to select here is Protection fighting style. Protection fighting style is really good when your whole party is right next to each other. The ability to impose disadvantage on an attack as a reaction is a pretty powerful defensive option. This character is going to be using a sword and shield, so Protection fighting style can really help improve the longevity of your party, especially because we are going to build our party so that we have multiple instances of protection, multiple instances of sentinel, so we're constantly making attacks and defending against attacks with our reactions. For our spell preparation here, these are mostly, of course, going to be used for smites, but you can pick up Bless, obviously great for your party to have access to Bless, and you always want Thunderous Smite, very important to have this, so you can stack this and another Smite attack, and I suggest taking Command. It's very good for the early game. The others are less important, so just pick up whatever you think you might occasionally cast. Paladin level 3, we get no particular increases, but we do get disease prevention. And at Paladin level 4, we get our first feat, and the feat that we're going to take is actually going to be Sentinel. You could take an ability score, an ASI, to even out your stats at this point, but I like getting Sentinel early in this party, because this gives us our reaction attacks right away, and it's such a core component of how this party plays out that we have these Sentinel attacks. We're going to end up with 2 characters that have Sentinel, and Sentinel doesn't trigger off of enemies attacking another character with Sentinel, but the 2 characters with Sentinel will be our highest armor class characters, and you are going to position them on opposite sides of your party with the other characters in between them, so that when your central character, the Wolf Barbarian, gets attacked, the 2 Sentinel characters can immediately retaliate with a ton of damage. You can smite on the reaction attacks with Sentinel, you'll have advantage on all your attacks, so you're likely to critically hit. You can do a ton of retaliatory damage with Sentinel, so very useful to have this. If you aren't a fan of Protection fighting style, you could also use this with the Dancing Breeze Glaive to do this at longer range, but I really like Protection fighting style for this character, so we're going to pick up Sentinel and Protection to make sure that we always have the perfect reaction for the situation. Level 5, we get extra attack as well as level 2 spells, which include Misty Step and also Aid. Aid is pretty useful for casting on our whole party, so if we're using items that let us refresh our spell slots, which this character is going to be the one that uses all of those. This is our only character that actually uses long rest resources at all, so any Potions of Angelic Reprieve or spell slot refreshing items that you have will go to this character. You can cast Aid at level 2 or level 3 on your whole party for a small boost to your hit points if you're not using a camp caster. I don't like to build these as though you're using a camp caster, because I think that most players don't, but Aid is still a useful spell to have to increase your party's longevity. Then, at Paladin level 6, we get our Aura of Protection. The tooltip here is bugged and says we get a +0 bonus to saving throws, but it's based on our Charisma, so it's a +3 bonus to every saving throw that our entire party is making us immune, more or less, to debilitating mental effects, things that target wisdom saves because of our very high saving throws, and very hard to hurt with AoE damaging spells, which of course are the dangerous thing for a party that's going to be grouped up, and why this character is such a key point of this party's functionality. Then, of course, at level 7, it gets even better when we get Aura of Warding, causing us to only take half damage from all spells, which is an amazing ability that stops us from getting hurt at all, since as I mentioned, most AoE spells target dexterity, so if you pass the saving throw, you only take half damage. That then gets quartered with Aura of Warding, which will usually be something like 8 to 10 damage, which you can heal back up in a single cast of your healing aura as an Oath of the Ancients Paladin, or just have your party drink potions, or just their natural healing through the Ring of Regeneration and Sword of Chaos on your Barbarian, and other sources of healing that we will have as well. Aura of Warding is what allows this party to stand close together and benefit from all of the abilities that we get when we're close together, so it makes this party vastly stronger when you get it. Now, you can still stand close together in fights where there aren't AoE effects prior to getting Aura of Warding, and even after getting Aura of Warding, there are times when you want to spread out because you care more about targeting down different enemies or avoiding some forms of AoE effect, especially ones that aren't spells. But this just gives you so much more tactical flexibility, power, and resiliency that it's incredibly good for the party. At character level 8, we're going to take a feat, and that feat is going to be an ability improvement to boost our dexterity up to 18 and our constitution up to 16, making sure that we have the hit points to survive any damage that might come our way. Now, again, this character is going to have very high armor class, so is unlikely to be targeted by enemies too frequently, but when you do want the hit points to survive, and of course, our higher dexterity lets us hit our attacks more often. This party cares less about hitting attacks, about increasing our to-hit chance than most parties, because every attack we make is with advantage, so we really don't struggle to hit our attacks, but more hit chance is always better, so increasing dexterity for hit chance and damage is very good for this character, of course. Then, at level 9, we get 3rd level spells, and the only really important 3rd level spell on this list is Plant Growth, because this can be used to slow enemy movement speed. This can trap enemy ranged characters in with our melee characters by quartering their movement speed, or just be used to split up an encounter, dividing enemies so they can't move towards you. Warden of Vitality is also fine. This character will be wearing the buff on heal items, so this gives you a bonus action to reapply those buffs, and this is one to keep in mind. It's definitely one we'll want prepared. And since we will be refreshing our spell slots frequently, you can also benefit from Elemental Weapon. Casting this gives a +1 bonus to attack rolls and an additional 1d4 damage to the weapon that it's cast on, which is a pretty powerful buff to last all day. We should be able to maintain concentration very easily with 16 con and the +3 from our charisma-based save aura, so we shouldn't have trouble keeping concentration on elemental weapon, but the most usual use for a level 3 spell slot, other than smiting, which of course is what they're mostly used for, is going to be Plant Growth. For spells prepared at this level, I'm going to recommend that you have the ones that are sort of panic buttons, like Lesser Restoration, have Aid that you can cast on your whole party, and pick up Warden of Vitality and Elemental Weapon, so that you are able to use those throughout the day as needed. Paladin level 10, we get Aura of Courage, which gives our whole party immunity to fear. An incredible ability, of course. Normally you would want to pick up Hero's Feast or other ways to give your party immunity to fear, there are some very dangerous fear effects in the late game, but this party just gets to fully ignore them, which is one of the benefits of playing a party that's grouped up to take advantage of the very powerful Paladin auras, and something that most parties don't get to do. Then, at Paladin level 11, we're going to take Improved Divine Smite, of course, which means that basically all of our attacks make a level 0 smite, and it improves the level of our smites at every other level by +1, effectively, doing a ton of additional damage on every one of our attacks. This character will usually be attacking 3 times per round, 2 attacks on your round, and then an additional attack as a sentinel attack on the enemy turn. So you're going to apply this improved Divine Smite damage pretty frequently, and you're going to be able to critically hit with at least 1 smite per turn, if that's something that you want to do. Doubling the smite damage that you are doing does massive burst damage, so this character contributes very strongly to the damage output of your party, as well as providing all of the incredible defensive abilities. Finally, at Paladin level 12, we have 112 hit points, so we're very hard to kill and have excellent armor class, but let's make it even better and improve our dexterity up to 20. Now we've got +5 initiative and +5 to our armor class, so this character should be going first in most combats and be very hard to hit thanks to having medium armor, +5 dexterity, and a shield, so we're going to have incredibly high armor class. Let's talk really quick about the items for this character, because there are some specific items that I highly recommend that this character gets. For items for this character, there are 3 specific sets of items that I do recommend. Firstly, this character is going to want to make use of the buff on heal items, the Hellrider's Pride and the Whispering Promise, and then the upgrades that you get later on, because these provide Bless and Blade Ward to your entire party when you heal. You have the healing aura available to the Oath of the Ancients Paladin, so you are easily able to heal your entire party with a bonus action to apply Bless and Blade Ward to your whole party all at once. For our weapon, we need a finesse weapon, of course, because we're a dexterity-based build. So the weapon that we're going to use, again to apply powerful buffs to our whole party, is Falara Louv. Falara Louv can be activated to provide the shriek damage to enemies that are near it, or the sing hit bonus for allies within range, and of course, we will always be in range of whatever enemy we're targeting down, and our allies will always be in range of the buff, so Falara Louv can increase the damage output of our party significantly. Next, this character wants one of the medium armors with an uncapped dex bonus to AC, most notably the Armor of Agility for this character, because we want this one to have the highest AC possible so it doesn't get attacked, so that we can always use Protection or Sentinel, since if this character gets attacked, we don't get to use those abilities. We'd rather have our allies get attacked so those abilities get used. This character will be trying to boost its AC as high as possible, and then any other items that boost your AC as well are pretty useful. Just anything that increases your armor class can give you even more can off-put enemies even more from attacking you. Remember also that at points in the game, there will be times when heavy armor is better than the best medium armor that you have, and you have heavy armor proficiency, so you can use heavy armor. Just use whatever gives you the highest AC, because the whole purpose of this build is to have the highest AC possible. For our shield, I'm going to recommend the Sentinel Shield. +3 to initiative, combined with our 20 dexterity, means we will always win initiative with a +8 against all but the very fastest enemies in the game. And bonuses to charisma from the mirror or from the birthright hat should also go on this character to increase your saving throws even more and make you better at dialogue checks. Increases to our ability to make dialogue checks from anything that gives us advantage on rolls or makes us better at rolling dialogue checks are very useful for this character, since of course we want to be able to succeed on any persuasion checks we might have to make, so increases to our charisma fill double duty. Alright, that's build number 2, let's go on to build 3. For our third character, we're going to go with a somewhat unorthodox dagger build. The idea here is to make as many attacks as possible, both on and off of our turn, so that we can output maximum possible damage at every point in the turn cycle, while also providing a ton of utility to our party that we're otherwise missing. We're going to start with a level of Rogue, and for our ability scores, we're going to go with the classic greedy Rogue ability split of 17 Dexterity, 16 Constitution, and 15 Wisdom, which we will then even out later. I should mention also that every time I do these ability scores, someone gets mad because of the odd numbers. You can, if you want, start with 12 points in strength and do a 16, 16, 14, and then respec to this later. I just shortcut that because it's sort of a waste of time to show both. For our skill selection here, we're going to make sure we have expertise in stealth and sleight of hand, because those are the skills that our party is otherwise missing, and then pick up any other out-of-combat skills that we don't currently have. You get perception proficiency if you're using Astarion for this, which is what I recommend because the sheer number of attacks that this character outputs makes the best possible use of his unique story abilities, though of course this can be a custom character if you prefer. No other decisions to make at level 1, so let's move on to level 2. And at level 2, we're going to immediately deviate and take a level of Ranger. This gets us medium armor proficiency, which is pretty nice to add into this character because we can use one of the uncapped medium armors for even higher armor class. This is one of our 2 Sentinel characters, so we don't want this character getting attacked. We want attacks directed to the Barbarian, so we want this character's armor class as high as possible. For our favored enemy, we don't particularly need any of these, so we can take whatever skill proficiency we think we might want for our party. Arcana is probably the one that comes up the most often that we don't currently have available, but you won't be making those intelligence skill rolls that frequently, so you don't usually need them. So we're just going to take Mage Breaker here, because how else would we fit True Strike into the build? For our Natural Explorer, we're going to take Fire Resistance, because Fire Resistance is the most common damage type, and this does make this character actually quite survivable with our high armor class and high hit point total combined with our resistances. We're going to be pretty good at living through incoming damage, even if we happen to take any, which we mostly won't. For our skill selection here, there is nothing here that we're easily able to take from Ranger that is relevant, that you can pick up Nature just to have a few more of the intelligence skills covered. But then let's move on to level 3. And at level 3, we get to take a fighting style, which gives us 2 weapon fighting. 2 weapon fighting means that we are now dealing our full dexterity of damage with our offhand attacks, so it's going to make all of our attacks quite powerful when we are dealing offhand attack damage. And for our spell selection, we're going to pick up Enhanced Leap and Long Strider, 2 ritual spells, so these can be freely cast without spending spell slots outside of combat, and they will increase our party's mobility drastically. Every party should have access to these spells. Long Strider you want up on your whole party all the time, but especially an all-melee party whose whole challenge is getting next to enemies. These 2 spells help significantly with that, so being able to pick them up on this character improves our party dramatically. Next, we're taking another level of Ranger, and the Ranger class that we're going to take is Gloomstalker. The whole idea here is to make as many attacks as possible, and the Gloomstalker additional attack is incredible. The bonus movement speed, of course, can help us close distance to important enemies, and the +3 initiative means that combined with our 20 dexterity, which we'll have by the end of the game, this character will also have +8 initiative, so our whole party should be winning initiative basically all of the time. For our spell selection here, we're going to grab Fog Cloud. Fog Cloud can be useful for hiding in. This character will be able to hide as a bonus action, so you can use it to provide obscurement and then bonus action hide if you somehow get into a bad situation. But also it can be useful for blinding enemies. Since our entire party is melee, enemies will often have very restricted movement because they're going to be faced by a wall of steel at all times and unable to move through it to get out of hazardous effects. So a no-save blind can just give enemies permanent disadvantage on all of their attacks. The advantage isn't as useful if you place it, so that your characters are standing just outside the edge of it and the enemies are inside the edge of the fog cloud. The advantage isn't as useful because we already have advantage on every attack, but it's still a pretty powerful ability to have access to and can help you win certain fights and also help move ranged enemies out of awkward positions to force them to come closer to your melee characters. At Ranger level 4, we're going to pick up a feat, and just like our Paladin, the feat that we're going to take here is Sentinel. Sentinel is especially good with offhand attacks, because the way that dual wielding works in Baldur's Gate 3, it says you make a weapon attack, but if you have dual wielding turned on, the little two swords icon, you make both a main hand and offhand attack with your reaction attacks. So we get to double up on our Sentinel attacks when we're dual wielding, as well as our other opportunity attacks. So this character does a ton of damage on Sentinel attacks off turn. We also have Sneak Attack, which interacts somewhat weirdly with Sentinel in Baldur's Gate 3, because you can only Sneak Attack once per round in Baldur's Gate, which is a little bit different from how it works in Tabletop. But when you Sneak Attack off your turn, it uses your Sneak Attack from the next turn that you were going to take, not the previous turn. So there are some times where you will be able to double up on Sneak Attack in a single round at the cost of your Sneak Attack next round, but damage now is always better than damage later, so you're going to be very happy to get these additional Sneak Attacks early to kill enemies faster. So you can create situations where you can Sneak Attack twice in a round when you have Sentinel. It won't work 100% of the time, but it does work enough of the time that it's a real advantage. Then we're grabbing Ranger level 5 for extra attack, and because we're a Gloomstalker Ranger, we also get Misty Step, which of course is excellent to pick up as well at this level, being able to have additional mobility. This character will get bonus action dashes, and multiple of them as we continue to level up, but every character should have access to Misty Step, so this character getting it gives us even more mobility and utility across our entire party. For our spell selection here, we're going to take Spike Growth, although another one to consider is Silence. This is a very good spell to have available for shutting down mages. This party is already pretty good at shutting down mages, but sometimes you might not be able to get up onto them to be able to just beat them down. So Silence is another one. If you find you aren't using Fog Cloud, you can replace it with Silence. I wouldn't replace either of these other two spells. At level 7, we're going back into Rogue now that we've picked up extra attack, which gives us additional cunning action dashes so that we can move around the battlefield even more easily. Obviously, we prefer to use our bonus action for offhand attacks, but the cunning action dash can help us get into position to make sure that we're on the appropriate targets. Then, at Rogue level 3, we're going to take Thief Rogue so that we can make even more offhand attacks. This means in the first round of combat, we're making 5 attacks, right? 2 from our main hand, 1 from Gloomstalker Ranger, and then 2 with our offhand. And then probably a 6th attack with our Sentinel attack as a reaction. So we're going to be getting a ton of attacks, a 6th and 7th attack as a Sentinel action, as a Sentinel reaction. So we're going to be getting a ton of attacks, and that's before we have any effects like haste or whatever. If we are using Bloodlust potions or potions of haste, we'll get even more attacks, of course. So this character is going to be outputting tremendous damage. Each of these individual attacks won't be doing tons of damage on its own, but we're going to apply our full dexterity to our damage, and when you start doing that many, many times per turn, it really starts adding up. So this character just making all of these attacks is going to be able to output considerable damage, and of course provides all the utility that the party needs. Then, at character level 9, we're taking our 4th level of Rogue so that we can pick up another feat. And of course, we're going to take an ability improvement to bring our dexterity up to 18 and our wisdom up to 16. You could also do a 12, 18, 16, 8, 14, 8 split. That would be fine for this character if you want the additional jump distance. This character will have bonus action dashes though, so I highly recommend the greedy attribute split to maximize your dexterity and thus your damage as much as possible. Then, at this next level, we have a couple options. You could continue leveling in Rogue to increase your sneak attack more, or you could continue leveling in Ranger just to get a few more hit points and better utility spells. I'm going to recommend that you put your remaining levels into Ranger. I think that that will just give you slightly more powerful class features overall. Another option, too, is we could put a couple more levels into Fighter. Battlemaster Fighter is a normal way to finish off this character, but we do want 3 feats, so we can still hit 20 dexterity, so we're pretty incentivized to take an 8-4 split. In that case, we're just going to take Ranger. We get another favored enemy. Doesn't really matter what you take. You can take a skill selection here, just whatever you want for flavor. And then for our natural explorer, we're going to take cold resistance to give ourselves the most possible damage resistance to the most common damage types. Ranger level 7, we get Iron Mind, which gives us proficiency in wisdom and intelligence saving throws. So we are incredible at passing saving throws. The wisdom proficiency means that we are now going to have +9 to our wisdom saves, +10, 3 from our wisdom, 4 from our proficiency, and 3 minimum from our paladin ally. So we are never going to fail wisdom saves thanks to the Iron Mind class feature. And we get to add in more spells like Silence to make sure that we can shut down the most dangerous enemies in the game before combats actually start. Finally, at Ranger level 8, we get Land Stride Difficult Terrain, which is pretty nice because we do have spike growth, and of course, this party will sometimes run into trouble if enemies are on the opposite side of difficult terrain from you, because anything that restricts your mobility is dangerous when you're all melee, so removing one of the potential ways that can happen is very strong. And for our feat selection, we're going to max out our dexterity, giving us the highest possible initiative, armor class, and damage. Itemization for this character is extremely simple, and as a result has no danger of running into conflict with the rest of our party. We want a powerful light armor. You can use the Yuan-Ti scale mail as well if you need the if it's the best armor class that you have available, but there will be light armors that give you higher armor class at various stages in the game. So you're basically, again, just looking for whatever the highest possible armor class is. Highest armor class light armor is, since you want enemies to target your Barbarian. You will also want to have items that increase your critical hit chance. Anything that increases your crit chance, like the Knife of the Undermountain King, is excellent, and that works out well because you need 2 light finesse weapons in order to maximize your damage output. Since we're attacking so many times per round, we also want anything that adds damage dice to our attacks, in particular things like the Dark Justiciar gauntlets that add 1d4, that if they add damage dice to your attacks, those will be multiplied when you critically hit, which will be very frequently since you're making tons of attacks with advantage and have improved critical hit chance. So anything that adds damage dice to your attacks is super high value. So you're looking for crit chance improvements, damage dice, and just the highest armor class light armor that you can find, and that's all that this character needs in order to function optimally. Alright, let's move on to character number 4. For the 4th character, there's a lot of different directions we could take this character, but what I'm using it for is basically to problem solve. This is still honor mode, so there's still a lot of things that can go wrong, and we want a character whose job it is to stop those things from happening by shutting down the most dangerous enemies and being able to operate outside of the group while still having a lot to contribute when grouped up with the rest of your party. You could use a Paladin variant, like a Lockett-in or a Sorcerer-in or a 210 Paladin Swordsbard or something like that, just to do sort of maximum damage and use Band of the Mystic Scoundrel shenanigans to shut down enemies. But to stay on the melee theme while bringing as much power as possible, we're just going to use the good old-fashioned Tavern Brawler Monk. This way we can Stunning Strike important enemies and shut them down, but again I want to emphasize that there's a lot of different characters that would fit fine into this party. This one does have some pretty cool synergies with what the party is doing though, which we will talk about as we continue to build. For this character, of course, we are going to start with Monk, and for our attribute spread, we're going to take the Strength Elixir spread of 16 Dexterity, 15 Constitution, and 16 wisdom to maximize our important stats. This character will be drinking an elixir of Hill Giant Strength every day up until you get Cloud Giant Strength, and then they'll be drinking an elixir of Cloud Giant Strength every day to set their strength to 20. That's the only hard item requirement in this entire party build, is just to drink an elixir once a day. If you really hate that, then just replace this with a Lock-It-In or Swordsbard, and you will do just fine as well. You can also build this monk without the elixir stats. It will just make them a little bit squishier, which we do want to avoid for this particular party build, because we want the monk to be able to tank attacks if necessary. Make sure you have athletics, that's the only important skill for this character, and with our last two attribute points, you can either put those in charisma or intelligence. Intelligence is the best for your saving throws, because there are some enemies that target intelligence saves, or put these into dexterity. Use Ethel's Hair to hit 18 dexterity on this character, and then you get an extra feat out of the deal. I'll be demonstrating as though we didn't do that, but that is probably the most powerful way to build this character. At level 2, we get our second level of Monk, giving us increased movement speed while not armored. And again, movement speed is so critical to this party, and all of our characters are getting tons of additional movement speed. We have many ways to improve our movement speed, so that's one of the strengths of this party, and one of the reasons that this character synergizes so well with it. And then, of course, we also get the bonus action dashes. They cost key points, unlike the rogue variants, but we can really get into position to wherever we need to be. Monk level 3, to no one's particular surprise, we're going to take the Way of the Open Hand Monk, getting the topple flurry of blows. So this is another way to knock enemies over or push enemies over. Staggering enemies to make them unable to take reactions is also quite relevant to this party. Sometimes you'll want to maneuver around a melee enemy. If you can prevent their opportunity attacks, it gives you a lot more freedom of movement when you're moving around. And pushing an enemy is also very relevant to knock them off of cliffs and down into the rest of your party. This character will be probably the best, thanks to Monk's increased jump and ability to jump as a free action with key points. This character will be the best character you have at reaching high ground without spending any spell slots on it, like a Misty Step or something, so being able to push the enemy down to the waiting arms of your party members below is also very relevant. Topple is actually less powerful for this party than it usually is, but still very good, because you have advantage on all your attacks. I will mention also that Way of the Shadow Monk is actually pretty good for this party as well, because you can use it to assassinate targets that are otherwise hard to reach with the bonus action Teleport. But Open Hand Monk is just so powerful that it's hard to pass up, of course. Then, at Monk level 4, we're going to take a feat, and the feat that we're going to take is Tavern Brawler. To no one's surprise, this is the unarmed attacking feat. It doubles our strength bonus to hit, our strength bonus, and it doubles our strength bonus to hit and damage, and our strength bonus is 20 thanks to the elixirs. Tavern Brawler is an absurdly broken feat, so this party is going to abuse it. Now, I don't feel quite as bad abusing broken mechanics on an all-melee party as on a more traditionally powerful party, because we do have to overcome the restrictions. Tavern Brawler is still a busted feat, but that's great, because we just get incredibly strong and can solve any problem that might be giving the rest of our party trouble. Next up, we're taking Monk level 5 to get the extra attack, and of course we also get Stunning Strike. Stunning Strike is an incredibly powerful feature that is going to shut down the most dangerous enemies on the field, and it's basically free. It just costs a key point to use, so you can always use it. So this character becomes even better at locking down specific enemies. You will never miss your attacks, especially because, if necessary, you have advantage on all of your attacks for free, so you're going to guarantee to land a hit, and then you're very likely to land Stunning Strike. The save DC on Stunning Strike is based on either your strength or your dexterity, whichever is higher, and we have tons of free strength points from the strength elixirs, so we're going to stun enemies very, very reliably. Next, we're going to go to Monk level 6 to take Way of the Open Hand ability to add the manifestations. These add our Wisdom plus a d4 to our damage and give us elemental damage types. The most relevant here is Radiant if we want to use radiating orb effects, but honestly, that's sort of overkill. Any enemy that this character is attacking is going to be dead or incapacitated, so you don't really need to use Radiant Orbs with the Manifestation of Soul. It does give you the option to do so, but that's probably overkill in general, and there are usually more powerful items that you can use. You also, of course, get the incredibly broken Wholeness of Body feature, which gives you an extra bonus action, so you can make additional flurries of blows, but as always with monk builds, we want to be even better at making additional flurry of blows, so we're going to take a quick jaunt out of monk, starting at level 6, and pick up our levels in rogue. Level 1 Rogue gets a sneak attack, which isn't particularly powerful for this character, but since we're only making unarmed attacks, which don't trigger sneak attack, but we do also get an additional skill and expertise, which lets us get athletics expertise, making us basically incapable of failing to push an enemy, so we will always be able to push enemies to exactly where we want them, another very powerful tool in our arsenal. Then, at Rogue level 2, we also get bonus action Hide, Dash, and Disengage, and no longer have to spend key points on this if it's something that we need to do, so the positioning requirements for our entire party just eased up even more. Between the incredibly far movement distance and the incredible amount of additional movement actions that this party gets, you'll always be able to position exactly where you want to be, so even as an all-melee party, you should not ever have trouble reaching specific enemies, because we've invested so heavily into our mobility. Of course, what we're really here for is Rogue level 3, where we get to take Fast Thief Rogue and make yet another additional offhand attack, so we can make another Flurry of Blows attack. That lets us make 6 attacks in our basic rounds of combat, 2 with our main hand and 4 with our offhand, thanks to Flurry of Blows, all of which are applying double our strength modifier and hitting 100% of the time, or 99% of the time, because we're way over our expected hit chance values and also have advantage on all of our attacks as needed. So the amount of damage that this character is doing is ridiculous, and of course when added to the 3 other very high damage characters that we have, very few enemies will be able to survive multiple rounds, and if they do, then we get to hit them on the off turns. Next up, we're going back into Monk, which gets us Evasion, which means that we are taking half damage or no damage when we succeed on saves. So this character is even harder to kill with dexterity targeting spells than our entire party would be. So even if we somehow fail a dex save, we take half damage, then we take half damage again from the Ancient's Paladin aura. So we are taking almost no damage and literally no damage if we ever succeed a save, which of course we will almost all the time because we're proficient in dex saves, have high dexterity, and have the Paladin aura, so we're going to have incredibly high dexterity saving throws, and be able to evade the damage from most spells. We'll never be frightened, so Stillness of Mind won't come up, which is actually a good thing, because in Baldur's Gate 3 it casts automatically and effectively stuns you for the turn, because it costs your action to use it. So the fact that we're able to prevent receiving fear, because we have the Paladin aura to make us immune to fear, means that what's normally a downside of a class feature, Stillness of Mind, doesn't come up for this character build. And so we get some synergy there as well. For our feat here, we're going to take Alert, because the only thing that we need for this character to be effective is to win initiative. So this gives us +8 initiative on this character. Now we have a minimum of +8 on our entire party, so we're going to win initiative over just about every enemy in the game. If we are going into a fight with a particularly fast enemy, there's a couple with initiative bonuses that high or higher, but not that many, then we can use Vigilance Elixirs or whatever to increase our initiative even further, or equip more initiative gear, but +8 on our whole party should be plenty to get you through honor mode. Then we're going to take Monk level 9 to get the resonating punches, just to deal even more damage and have the area of effect damage available. This can help clear out trash mobs in the late game, and gives us even more jump distance, which is incredibly powerful because we can jump as a free action thanks to our Step of the Wind dash. So this character is even more mobile than it was before. All right, that is character number 4, but of course we can power it up even further with items, so let's do that. And for items for this character, there's really only 3 key items, really only 1 key item that you absolutely have to have, and that is, of course, the strength elixirs. When you drink one of these, it's going to set our strength to 21, giving us the maximum possible damage bonus with Tavern Brawler, and then when we get Cloud Giant elixirs, we're going to upgrade that even further, meaning that we hit all our attacks and do ridiculous amounts of damage. This character can also benefit from anything that adds damage to our unarmed attacks, like the Flawed Helldusk gloves, which boosts unarmed attacks in addition to weapon damage, so they're very good for this character. Or you can use the Gloves of Dexterity to put our remaining points into Wisdom, take Ethel's Hair to go to 18 Wisdom, and give this character even better initiative and armor class. That would boost us up to 20 armor class base before we add any additional bonuses. You do want a little more armor class on this character if you can get up to 21, 22 through effects, enchantments, or other items that boost your armor class, like the Cloak of Protection, then that will be helpful as well. But those are the only real item that you care about is the elixirs. Best in slot for your boots, of course, is the Boots of Uninhibited Kushigo, which add your Wisdom modifier to your unarmed strike damage, so we're doing even more damage with every attack. And for your chest slot, the Vest of Soul Rejuvenation is very good for this character. Whenever you succeed on a saving throw, you heal, which, again, not a huge bonus, but relevant, because you are going to succeed on all of your saving throws against spells throughout this entire game. But of course, also you increase your armor class and can use your reaction to make an unarmed strike against any attacker that misses. Your unarmed strikes do a ton of damage, and this character is going to be one of the ones that gets targeted sometimes, because it will have lower armor class than the 2 Sentinel characters, and when you are targeted, you can use Protection to force the attack to miss, and then get your reaction attack here, or just trigger Sentinel attacks from your other 2 characters. Get your reaction attack from the Vest, or just trigger Sentinel attacks from the other 2 characters, or both. So this gives you even more ways to do off-turn damage, and synergizes even more with the party as a whole. All right, that is the 4 builds for this party. A quick word on strategy and positioning as well, just so that you have some idea of how to move your characters around. Let me go ahead and just leave the camp here to where I can actually position my characters. What you're going to want to do with your party in general is position your characters such that the 2 Sentinel characters are on either side of the party. So you're going to want your Monk sort of in the back. You're going to want your Barbarian in front and in the center. You're going to want your Paladin sort of in front and to the side here, where you can cover both the Barbarian and Monk with Sentinel, and your Rogue on the other side, where you can cover both characters with Sentinel, and where the 2 Sentinel characters aren't overlapping. Now, obviously, you're going to move around a lot in combat, but this is just going to be your sort of basic formation. And then if you want to trigger the reaction attack from your Monk, you can move them up to the front line and drop the Barbarian back in order to give yourself a little bit more opportunity for enemies to attack the Monk and trigger the the Vest of Soul Rejuvenation retaliation attack. So that gives you some options. The Monk, of course, can also be roaming outside of the pod and to attack enemies that the rest of your party can't reach, while the rest of your party engages the main threat. All right, my friends, I hope that you've enjoyed this video of an all melee party for Baldur's Gate 3 Honor Mode. If you have, of course, feel free to leave a comment and like the video. Helps me out a ton with the algorithm, so I appreciate you taking the time to do that. And of course, you can subscribe to my channel for more Baldur's Gate 3 full party builds, build guides for individual characters, and other strategy game content. And if you've really enjoyed the video, of course, feel free to leave a thank you with the join button or super thanks buttons below. Of course, everyone who does that, I do appreciate your generosity. And I will catch you next time. Cheers, folks. GG.